Chapter 9.
The headlights illuminate the endless highway, and there's something mesmerizing, paralyzing about it. He could go anywhere. He could just keep driving, heading into that unknown journey. He glances to the passenger seat. Draco is there. "You're here," Harry says quietly. "Yes. I can hear you this time." Draco stares ahead at the road disappearing beneath the car wheels, the white lines flashing past as if the world is turning beneath them and they are standing still. "I've come to say goodbye," Draco says. No, the word is out before Harry can stop it. "I've got something for you." Draco looks away. "A memory. But it will cost a lot to give you." "Don't." Perhaps it's the potion, perhaps it's because the realization is hitting Harry like a wave against a cliff. This might be the last time he ever sees Draco. He doesn't know if he can ever find him. "I'd rather have you than a memory." Draco looks back at the road. "After I've given you the memory," he says, "I won't be able to come back again." "Did you hear me?" "I heard you." Harry drives in silence for a long time. He keeps his eyes trained on the road ahead, but he can feel the weight of Draco's gaze upon him. Then, Draco speaks quietly. "Pull over." "What now?" "Yes." They're passing through some small village in Hampshire. There's a playground nearby, the night dew gathering on the empty swings. Harry pulls into the parking lot next to it. He turns the engine off and waits. Draco is silent for a long time and Harry thinks he's collecting his thoughts. Draco's methodical like that. Everything has to be in its correct order. "What do you think happened to me?" Draco asks at last. Harry frowns. "What do you mean?" "How I disappeared." "Well, a forced disappearance, of course." "No." Harry waits a long moment, concentrating on the feeling of the steering wheel beneath his hands. Something solid, something real. He exhales slowly. "No," he repeats at last, trying to hide the betrayal in his voice, but it comes through anyway. "No. I chose to disappear. Originally, at least." Harry is silent for a long time. He glances at the playground, staring at the empty swings, the worn tracks from where people made shortcuts across the grass. Desire paths, he thinks they're called. When people create their own paths as opposed to using the set footpaths. "You're angry," Draco says, and Harry tries to laugh, but the sound comes out as little more than a choked cry. "You left people behind, Draco." "God, do you ever think about other people?" "Your wife, Astoria, and your mother. She never stopped searching, damn it." "Damn you, and you're selfish." Harry cuts himself off, hating Draco, hating himself. He tries laughing bitterly, but he can't even do that, and he reaches for the door handle, feeling claustrophobic suddenly, needing to escape. "Are you leaving?" Draco asks. Harry pauses. "I'll understand," Draco says after a moment. "It's easy to leave. Coming home is hard." Harry exhales slowly and drops his hand from the door handle. "Why?" he says. Another long silence. Then, "I don't know. I just left for 3 months. I decided to come back after that, to fix some mistakes, but something happened." Frustration lances through Harry like a needle. "Draco, are you practiced in the art of legilimency?" Harry's heart drops. He glances away, gazing out into the night. A wind is picking up around the playground, making the swing sway. If Harry listens closely, he can hear the rattle of the chains. "I can perform the spell," Harry says at last, "but it won't work very well. They told me to practice it for my role as head Auror, and—" He trails off. "I hate it," he says at last, staring at the swing slowly swaying. Then he turns to Draco and lifts his wand. "But I'll try." "Wait." Harry waits. Draco touches a hand to the window, his fingers ghosting across the cold glass as if he's trying to ground himself somehow. "All right. Legilimens. Asterisk, asterisk, asterisk." It has been a long time since Harry last cast that spell, and he winces as soon as he says the word, waiting for the chaotic memories to smash into his mind, waiting to be caught helplessly in the riptide of someone else's consciousness. But there is nothing but darkness and silence, and for a moment he thinks he's failed completely. Then a scene slowly brightens around him until he's blinking in the sunlight. Everything seems so bright and crisp. He can see every color, feel every texture. This is nothing like the pensive memories. He's standing in the middle of a field. He holds out a hand, feeling the gold-colored wheat feather across his fingers. There's the smell of high summer in the air, the scent of dry air and splintered grass. He tilts his head back, staring at the sky. That cloudless blue, so pristine and perfect. Maybe he can stay here forever. In an endless summer. Here, in his mind. Then he slowly turns and walks across the field. The wheat rolls away in every direction, an ocean of gold. In the distance, there's a thin black road cutting across the land like a scar, a Renault Megane parked along it. Harry walks towards it. He feels strangely disconnected from everything. Not happy, not sad, not angry. Nothing. He opens the driver's door and sits down, glancing into the rearview mirror. He can see himself, but at the same time it's not him. For a moment, his green eyes fade to gray. He starts the engine and drives. For a moment, all he sees is the road. Then the images flash through him like a series of photographs, like a wild rush of unhappiness. His parents, no, those are Dracos, young and smiling again. Lucius will always be the strongest person in the world, and Narcissa the most beautiful, and their family is perfect. And then they're growing old, and Lucius looks so weak and afraid, and that's not supposed to happen. Fathers are supposed to be invincible, and it makes him feel sick to his stomach. It makes him terrified. Narcissa and Lucius are arguing again. That's all they seem to do these days. But her voice is getting quieter and quieter because there's too many people in the house now. Aunt Bellatrix, who makes the prisoner scream, scream, scream. Until Harry wants to beat his head against the wall, or just go to the cellar and Avada Kedavra them all just to put them out of their damn misery. Or maybe he'll just Avada Kedavra himself. Then it will all be over. Nobody can control him then. Nobody controls a dead person. But he can't even do that, and he's standing in front of a mirror with his wand held to his forehead, but he can't bring himself to do it. It's pathetic. And then the emotions, all the anger and confusion and rage die away along with the war, and Lucius has gone and Narcissa says they'll join him soon, but he can't go away. If he runs away, he'll be just like his father, and isn't that a cruel irony when he spent half his life wanting to grow up just like his father? No, he's master of the house now, so he has to be the perfect son now, and he can't run away. He has to set all the finances in order and make sure Narcissa doesn't fade away to nothing and takes care of herself properly. And he has to make sure everything is perfect. He'll marry someone, and they'll have a house and respectable lives, and everything will be perfect. But it's not. And he feels nothing inside, like the war has cut away everything that used to make him human and left nothing but a paper cutout. I can't run away, I won't do it. Harry is suddenly yanked sharply forwards, like an invisible hand has grabbed his collar, and he recognizes this place. He's standing in an owl emporium. It's a warm September day. Summer is still fading from the earth. He'll purchase a new owl and go home and start again, every day the same, and he can't take it anymore. This emptiness, this ceaseless routine, it's like singing the same song over and over. It's like drawing lines on maps for journeys he'll never take. It's like running on air. He needs to run, 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 until he can't hear anybody calling his name anymore, until he forgets everything, until he's lost, until he's gone. He walks out of the shop. It's a warm September day. He could go anywhere. He disapparates. Asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. Harry feels the cold first, and then the rest of his senses filter through. He's sitting in the driver's seat of the Renault, but he's him again. In his own head. It's nighttime, and he's parked beside a playground in a small village in Hampshire. He glances into the rearview mirror just to look at his own reflection, just to make sure he's himself. He looks beside him, to the passenger seat. Draco sits there, but he looks exhausted, insubstantial as smoke, and Harry realizes he's already fading. The worst thing, Draco says, each word weighted with exhaustion, is that even now, I'm not sure I want to come back. I ran away, just like my father. It's all pointless now, isn't it? You didn't run away, Harry says, his heart heavy with emotions, and he can't tell whether it's his own sadness or simply remnants of sorrow from Draco's mind. You just left for a little while. We all do. He thinks of Ron leaving them during the search for the Horcruxes. He thinks of himself and the many times he wished for an easy death to deliver him from the choices the war imposed upon him. Do you remember, Draco says, when we were 11? Harry looks out at the playground, listening to the wind whistling through the chains of the swings. Yes, he says. When he looks back to Draco, he's not there. He's finally lost. He's finally gone. Asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. Harry arrives at Ron and Hermione's house a little after midnight. Hermione takes one look at his face, then immediately sets about making a pot of tea. Ron ushers him over to the fireplace. What happened? Didn't the luck potion work? Ron demands. You look like you've had the day from hell. It worked, I suppose, Harry says. Still working now. 12 hours, you said. Didn't you, Hermione? She nods, coming over to sit in the armchair opposite Harry. When did you take the Felix Felicis? 1 o'clock this afternoon. She checks her watch. 20 minutes left. You need something stronger than tea? Ron asks. Got some fire whiskey if you want it. No thanks. Harry gazes into the flames of fire. It's burned low in the grate, and the flames are small, wavering gently over glowing coals. Draco's gone. Ron drags over a nearby footrest and perches on it, looking worried. That's the whole case, isn't it? I mean, you've been searching for months. Not really a revelation. Harry laughs humorlessly. He's been appearing, remember? Oh, yeah. I remember you told us about that. Ron frowns. To be honest, I thought you were just imagining things? Ron looks abashed. Sorry, mate. But this case, you've been a bit obsessed with it. I dunno, it can play tricks with your mind sometimes. Hermione reappears with 3 mugs of tea, handing one to Harry. How do you know he's not coming back? She asks gently. He told me. Harry stares down into the cup of tea. He said he can't come back. Not enough energy or magic left. He wonders whether he should tell them about the memories. Normally he wouldn't, but he has the feeling it's something to be shared. He asked me to cast a legilimens on him and see some memories. Oh no, Ron says, looking wary. You're bloody awful at that. What happened? I saw a memory, Harry says. Clear as a photograph. Then I all these memories and emotions unraveled, like a ball of string. The realization of Draco's skills only hits Harry now. It's the best occlumency I've ever seen, including all the Auror trainers that worked with me. You wouldn't believe it. I didn't see his memories. I lived his memories. What was it like? Hermione asks, looking intrigued. I've never done occlumency myself, and I always wondered. Harry wants to answer her, but he doesn't know how to phrase it. It was like flying, he thinks, but with no broom, no spells, nothing. Just rushing through the sky, and he's reminded so strongly of that night Draco drove by the river, and it felt like they were traveling through the sky, the world disappearing beneath them and the stars falling like rain. It was like running on air, Harry says at last. Oh, that clears it up, then, Ron says. Anyway, don't worry about it. You'll figure out this case eventually. Especially if you have a brilliant Auror like me helping you. He grins. And Hermione, of course. Ron turns to Hermione. Right? She stares blankly at him. There's a glazed look on her face and Harry recognizes it instantly. He slowly sets his mug of tea aside and leans forward. Hermione, he says quietly, but she quickly shushes him with a dismissive hand. Ron and Harry wait. At last, Hermione stands up slowly. Ron, she says, fetch my copy of Thaumic Mathematics and the Nature of Causality, will you? What? What the bloody hell have you been reading about, Muggle rockets or something? Ron gets up and disappears, reappearing a few minutes later with a very large book under one arm. You really need to control your library. I got attacked by an angry kickstool, he says grumpily. Quiet, Hermione says distractedly, and Harry, unable to stand still, jumps to his feet and begins pacing endlessly. For the next few minutes, all he can hear is his own footsteps and the occasional turn of a page. I remember now, Hermione murmurs. Let's see. It really represents a form of phase space. That's the key. The 3 rules. Do not interfere with the nature of causality. She looks up at Harry, her eyes bright. Harry, she says, I think Malfoy had a time turner. The clock chimes 1 o'clock. Harry's luck has run out. Asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. Space and time are always unstable when it comes to magic, Hermione says, drinking her 3rd cup of tea. Space, yes. That's why they advise avoiding disapparating over large distances, but especially time. It's dangerously unstable. And it works on similar principles to space. Traveling over large eras of time is very dangerous. But where would he get a time turner from? Ron interrupts. They were all destroyed by the Ministry, remember? I don't know, Ron. But it's a possibility. Hermione sets her mug of tea back down. I can't believe I didn't think of it before. When you disapparate and something goes wrong, you get splinched, and the same thing happens when you use a time turner incorrectly. Ron winces. Malfoy's splinched between 2 dimensions? Sort of. He doesn't exist completely in either space, but he doesn't not exist, either. That doesn't make any sense. It doesn't need to make sense, Harry says, pacing in front of the fire. Hermione, how do we fix this? She shakes her head. I'll need to research it. Perhaps talk to some unspeakables. They know about this sort of magic. But Harry, you must know that there's only 3 recorded cases of this happening. It's so rare to diagnose because nobody ever knows. Someone's usually secretly using a time turner, and one day they just vanish and that's it. But of the 3 recorded cases... Yes, Harry asks impatiently. Hermione looks down at the book in her lap. Each one required a time turner to rescue the trapped person, she says quietly. And not just any time turner, but the same one the person used to travel to the other time. Impossible, Ron says, but Hermione shakes her head. In 2 of the cases, the person placed the time turner somewhere safe, where it could be found and used by the rescuers in the future. Brilliant, so we'll just... Hermione shakes her head. The rescuers had to spend months figuring it out. The time travelers had to abide by the rules of causality. They were not able to tell anyone how or where they placed the time turner, or even where in time they were. Draco couldn't, Harry says suddenly. It all makes so much sense in hindsight. He'd try, but... Hermione nods. Trying to break the rules of causality, it would be like trying to disapparate to 2 different places at once. Ron winces again. Harry stares into the flames of the fire. So all I have to do, he says quietly, is find the time turner? Well, there's a lot of complicated magic involved, but it's somewhere for you to start. Yes, Hermione says. Find the time turner, and we'll do some research. Ron repeats gloomily. You do want to help, don't you? Hermione says. Only because Harry's a right pain when he's obsessing with Malfoy, Ron says, sliding off the sofa and ambling towards Hermione's library room. Harry's too distracted to reflect on that particular remark. He looks at Hermione. How'd you figure this all out, anyway? She smiles faintly. Running on air. What? Running on air. You said being in Draco's head was like running on air. She pauses. The first person who ever used time travel, a witch in the 17th century, said that traveling through time was like running on air. You remembered that? Hermione smiles. Yes. Now go and get some rest. But that night he dreams of the river again, the road, and Draco's driving on, and Harry thinks he'll stay there forever. Asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. It had been difficult to arrange everyone's schedules to coordinate, but here they are. Astoria is pacing in the kitchen. She makes another pot of tea before Matthew gently reminds her that she's already made one. She's late, Astoria says, turning to Harry. Just tell me, please. Have you found Draco? I'd like to wait for Narcissa, he says, and Astoria bites her lip hard and looks away. 3 years, she says. 3 years. Merlin, I just want it to be over. You never really stop searching. The faint pop of someone operating. Matthew, calm and steady, standing by the warm fireplace like an immovable rock, speaks just as Astoria begins to rush away. Harry, why don't you get the door? I'll answer it, this is my house, Astoria protests, but Matthew shakes his head and Astoria falls back, allowing Harry to disappear down the hallway. Narcissa looks quite formidable, Harry thinks when he opens the door. Dressed in heavy and formal robes, a string of pearls about her neck and her hair elaborately styled. She looks at Harry with a look of undisguised anxiety, however. Draco. Come in, I'd like to talk to everyone at the same time, Harry says, and Narcissa quickly follows him inside. Astoria greets Narcissa with a perfunctory hello, but both women's eyes are trained on Harry. It would be cruel to make them wait any longer. He takes a breath. Did Draco ever have a time-turner? Their reactions tell him everything he needs to know. Astoria blinks, looking completely bewildered. Narcissa begins to shake her head, and then a flash of realization and then fear crosses her face. Narcissa, Harry says, and Astoria starts and turns to Narcissa. Draco had a time-turner? Astoria demands, her expression accusing. You. It's all right, Harry says quickly. Narcissa, if you know anything about this, you need to tell me right now. I think Draco's used a time-turner and something's gone terribly wrong. He's been trapped in time for 3 years? Astoria says, staring at Narcissa. Astoria, Matthew says quietly. She glances at him but doesn't respond. Narcissa looks at Astoria, then stares at Harry. Draco never had a time-turner, she says, one hand reaching for her necklace. But Lucius did. Astoria opens her mouth, but then looks across at Matthew and seems to catch an unspoken reassurance. She moves closer to him and he puts an arm around her shoulders. Narcissa gazes unseeingly at the fire. Lucius spent nearly all the family fortune acquiring it, Narcissa continues. It was madness, but he could not be dissuaded. He had already fled to Crete by then, but he frequently visited us to speak of his future plans. And he and Draco used the time-turner? Harry says quietly, and Narcissa glances sharply at him, her gaze refocusing. No, she says, sounding scandalized. Draco would never use it. Never. He'd said something to Lucius in an argument about using a time-turner once. That last memory of Narcissa's, Harry recalls. If you want to protect your family, father, I suggest investing in a time-turner and reconsidering some key choices you made 12 years ago. And Lucius seemed to become obsessed with returning in time to alter certain choices. But Draco was horrified when he found out about it. I know Draco wanted to return to the past, Harry says, thinking of the letters he'd found in Draco's diary. Do you remember when we were 11? Let's go back to that. But Narcissa shakes her head firmly. No. Draco regretted many things, but he made it very clear the past should never be revisited. The more Lucius spoke of using the time-turner, the more Draco argued about the danger of it and criticized Lucius's obsession with the past. She hesitates, then glances away. In the end, she says, so quietly that Harry has to lean forward to hear her, Draco said that if Lucius insisted on this madness, he would report him to the authorities. In the end, Draco took the time-turner and transfigured it to disguise it. He refused to tell his father where it was. Astoria moves suddenly, but when Harry looks at her, her arms are crossed and her expression is indecipherable. "And then what happened?" Harry asks. Narcissa's mouth trembles slightly, but she speaks clearly. "Draco disappeared." This time, Astoria speaks. "How could you?" "I was worried sick. I was a complete mess when Draco disappeared, and you knew." "I didn't," Narcissa says, looking distraught. "When Draco first disappeared, I had no idea. I told Lucius, thinking perhaps Draco had gone to Crete after all. But Lucius said he had no idea where Draco was." She's twisting her necklace so hard in her hands that Harry thinks the string will snap and send pearls rolling everywhere. Then, 3 months after Draco disappeared, Lucius wrote to say Draco was arranging a meeting with him. Lucius was pleased. He thought Draco had come to see the error of his ways and wanted to join him after all. "But you didn't think that was the purpose of the meeting," Harry says, watching Narcissa closely. Narcissa shakes her head. "No. I had the feeling Draco was going to stage a meeting, then call the Aurors with his father's location." "You don't know Draco," Astoria says suddenly. "You don't know what he was going to do." "I know Draco better than you think," Narcissa retorts, looking at her. "I know your engagement was false, and Draco only did it to please me." She looks away again. Secrecy and silence, Harry thinks. If only everyone had been honest with each other. "I think I know what happened," Harry says quietly, and both Astoria and Narcissa turn to look at him. "I think you're right, Narcissa. Draco left voluntarily for 3 months, but he decided to return and report Lucius's whereabouts. On the morning of Lucius's capture, an anonymous tip-off told us his location. But I think perhaps Lucius realized what Draco was going to do and tried to take both of them back into the past. And it went terribly wrong. He can imagine the struggle all too well. Perhaps the time-turner broke or slipped, but either way, only Draco was taken into the past, while Lucius remained behind. In the ensuing chaos as Auror arrived, Lucius didn't have the chance to tell anyone what had happened before he was killed. "Oh, Merlin." "Oh, no," Astoria says, looking pale and wretched. No. All this time, and Draco's been stuck in the past somewhere." She begins to cry. It's strange to see her cry, bright, breezy Astoria, always smiling, and Harry looks away uncomfortably as Matthew soothes her. Narcissa doesn't cry. She stares into the heart of the fireplace, at the bright flames flickering behind the grate, and her eyes are dry. All she ever wanted was her family to be complete, together again, and Harry's heart suddenly aches for her. "If Draco hid the time-turner somewhere in the past," he says, "do you have any idea where it might be? Perhaps a favorite place in the manor, or a hidden area he sometimes used." Narcissa shakes her head. "I'm sorry," she says. "I don't even know what it was transfigured into." Harry nods and tries to think of something optimistic to say. He can't. Asterisk. He spends the next week going through the old files, rereading the details of Lucius's capture and death over and over. There was a ministry commission into the death, of course, and that required a coroner's report. A full list of all clothing and items found on Lucius at time of death, and there is nothing listed to suggest a transfigured artifact. Lucius only had his wand and a small bag of galleons. Harry disapparates to the location where Lucius was captured and tries to accio the time-turner, to no avail. Perhaps Draco left it behind. Perhaps he dropped it just before vanishing. It could be a possibility, Hermione tells Harry, but her voice is doubtful. Still, he searches. Asterisk. Winter slowly melts to spring. Ginny sends Harry a postcard from France, where she's visiting the French national team to gauge their performance. A letter follows soon after. She's purchased a studio apartment closer to central London. You'd be surprised, or perhaps not, at how much international Quidditch players earn, she writes. My finances are in good order, so if you'd like to move back to the Westminster apartment, it's fine. I'm not fussed if you don't sell it. I suppose we should transfer ownership, unless you're happy to co-own it. I hear the rental marquises steady at the moment. He feels as though he's outstaying his welcome at Ron and Hermione's home, although he'd never dare tell them that. He can only imagine the wrath and indignation it would invoke. He's been there since Christmas, and it's March now. So he moves back to the apartment, convincing Ron and Hermione that yes, he honestly wants to be there. He'd like a little space right now, and he's grateful, for the first time, that neither he nor Ginny really moved into the apartment to begin with. There's no memories to deal with or possessions to remove. It's as bland and impersonal as he ever remembered it. It will do as a temporary base until he finds his home. The home he always wanted. The home he's spent his whole life looking for. It's a nice view. But this isn't you, is it, Potter? This is nothing. A concrete box in the sky. You need something grounded. Something real. The first night he moves back into the apartment, he stands by the kitchen counter and remembers how Draco stood there once, the small Christmas tree casting light over his face. I'm sorry, Harry says, and his words echo across the white walls, the polished floorboards. I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry. It sounds an awful lot like the sound of defeat.
Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed this chapter, please hit the subscribe button and ring the bell to stay updated with more audiobooks. Happy listening!